Hello, everyone. This is Jonathan Little, and today we're going to be playing a little bit of HoldemX. HoldemX is a new game by the people at Global Poker League, and you can actually play it for free at HoldemX.com, just HoldemX.com. And this game is like regular No Limit Hold'em, except for at the beginning of each game, well, in each game, you also have special cards you can use on the side, called X cards, that change the properties of the game. So, for example, you can do board +1 to make a card on the current street one rank higher. So if the flop is King 7-3, you can make it Ace 7-3, or King 8-3, or King 8-4. At the beginning of the game, you select cards to ban. These are cards your opponents cannot use. I have this strategy that seems to be working pretty well. We're going to ban pair top card, takes an ace 2 and changes it to an ace and an ace. Club to spade, also spade to club, and hearts diamond, also diamond to heart. This makes it harder for your opponents to get a flush. So notice the opponent banned the same cards that we did. We can't use these. So I'm going to default to a strategy where I pair the bottom card. So if I have ace, jack, I can turn it into pocket jacks. Redeal the flop, board -1 and board +1. This will ideally make it to where I can make a set. And we have to be a little bit cautious and try to make top set, because this pair bottom card, you don't really want to make bottom sets when your opponent can also make bottom set, middle set, or top set. So we have to be careful. We don't want to play a hand like King 4 and have it come Jack 7-4 and get all in, because very often we're going to be against a 7. Opponent can then use this card and we'll lose. Other notable cards, redeal turn, redeal river, those are pretty self-explanatory. Third hole card is not as good as it sounds. You have to use 2 of the cards. You can only use 2 of the cards. You can't use 3. I learned that the hard way one time. Hole card +1, hole card -1 are particularly weak, I think, compared to board +1 and board -1. So, here we go. In general, you want to play fairly snug from out of position. Oh, it looks like the cards are not quite on the screen. See if I can remedy this. Maybe that's better. All right, we're going to check here. Notice that we do have a time bank. And if you run out of time, you lose the game. We're going to be playing fairly snug from out of position. You'll find that being in position is very important in this game, because the person out of position has to play their X cards first. So imagine I, on the flop, do board +1, for example. Opponent can then do board -1, and it really hurts. If I do board +1 and he wants to completely change the flop, he can then redeal the flop, and I just lose out on my card. So this is a game that seems to be very important. Or you have to rely a lot on card advantage, or X card advantage, meaning I want to spend fewer of my cards to make my opponent spend a lot of his cards. And you also just want to play big pots when you use your cards. These cards are very valuable, and you don't want to just blow them in small pots. Like, you'll see some people here limp and then take 3 whole cards. And that's just a huge disaster, because he is giving away one of his powerful cards to win a small pot. So notice I folded 10-9 on that previous hand. That's a hand that's traditionally good in No Limit Hold'em, at least good enough. But in this game, I don't think it's good enough, because you're going to be out of position. Again, being out of position is detrimental. You want to have a very strong hand to get it all in from out of position. Or at least even play a pot from out of position. You'll find that typically jockeying for pots is not such a good idea, like trying to play small pots and using your cards. So notice right here, I could do board -1 to change the 6 into the 5. Then I could do pair bottom card to have 3 5s. But, again, this is a scenario where the opponent can just completely mess me up, and I don't want to put money in this pot. So we have the option to make a good hand there, but the opponent could easily change things up and put us in a bad spot. All right, so we raise, and opponent calls. All right, let's see what happens. We can use this pair bottom card on any street. So we have now middle pair. We can do board -1 here. We actually get to bet first. We can do board -1 to change this into a king. Opponent could then do maybe board +1. We could then do board +1 again to change it into a 2. So we're going to have top pair in this spot, pretty much no matter how it plays out. Of course, the opponent could redeal the flop, then we're left with King 7. That would be pretty bad. If he redeals flop, though, we could then redeal the flop again, trying to fish for a 7 or a king. But notice he just folds. And whenever they fold, that's fantastic, because we don't use any cards, and we win the pot. Making your opponent fold is very important, but it's kind of hard to make your opponents fold here, just because they always have the potential to make the nuts. Right here we have stone nothing. Another cool thing you can do is your opponent can bet, you can go all in, and if they call, you can then redeal the flop. If you have a reasonably strong, like, value hand, like pocket kings, for example. It's usually a pretty decent play. Because if your opponent's willing to get it all in here, and especially if they're out of position and they alter the board on you, you get to burn a card and then get it in with pocket kings, which is great. Here we're not even trying to win this pot. I'm just checking. We're just going to lose. I'm okay giving up the small pots. I don't think they're really worth fighting for. Seems like the main goal of this game is just get it all in with X cards such that you can make the nuts by the river. So opponent min raises. I mentioned I folded 10-9 earlier to a 3x raise. I can call this. It's dicey, though. You definitely want to figure out how often your opponent's continuation betting. Some players will continuation bet a lot, and some people will continuation bet very rarely. If he's going to continuation bet very rarely, in a straightforward manner, we can just bet turn and win the pot a lot. But he bets, and we fold. This is a spot where we could conceivably go all in. Like, if I had Queen-Jack here, I would strongly consider going all in. And if he calls, I would then redeal the flop. But again, out of position is very bad. You have to be very careful out of position. Just because, imagine we had that scenario and I go all in position. Opponent does nothing. I redeal flop. He can then do board +1 or board -1. But if he does board +1 or board -1 first, he uses a card, then I get to effectively negate that card. All right, so we can do board -1 here to make this into a 5. And I think that's probably going to be good enough in this exact scenario. Obviously, the jack is dangerous. But I think this is going to be pretty good. Well, so let's think about this. If we go all in, he is going to do something. And I may have to redeal the flop, but then we're just stuck with horrible queen 5. The problem is I don't want to call, because if I call, I have to use this board -1 immediately. So, we're going to go all in and experiment with this. I think this could just be horrifically bad, though. But again, this is a new game. I don't know what I'm doing. We're experimenting. We're seeing what happens. So notice opponent has to go first. So let's let him go first. Board -1. So let's see what he does. Changes the 3 into the 2. That's perfect. So that means he has a 2 in his hand. So we'll do board -1 and make this into a 5. If he does board +1, we'll then do board +1 on the 2. That way, we'll have pocket 5s versus a random 2. Of course, then we're not actually drawing super live or anything. But that's going to be better than letting him keep the 2. So we're in great shape at the moment if we do nothing. Like, if he just lets this happen, we pretty much win. So he's going to do board +1 on the 5 to make it into a 6. We'll do board +1 on the 2 to make it into a 3. I think this is the play. We could also just redeal the flop. You know what? Maybe I should redeal the flop instead. So the problem with redeal flop is if a 2 comes, we just lose. Yeah, so let's go ahead and do board +1 on the 2. So we'll make this into a 3. All right, so we know our opponent has a 2 in his hand. So really we're just fading a jack, a 6, or whatever else comes. Maybe using redeal flop here is better because this is only good on the flop, right? That means I have no control over the turn in the river. But I think this is probably fine. I mean, we're pretty much just... We know the opponent has a 2, so we're basically playing pocket 5s against 1 card. And we're happy with that. All right, so opponent checks. Nothing he can do. We're going to go ahead and do... I guess it doesn't matter. Might as well go and do pair bottom card. Oh, no, we should not do pair bottom card. Because if the river's a queen, we want to make sure we have the queen 5, not pocket 5s. Just in case our opponent does have 9-2, for example. He probably has a very similar hand like we do, if I had to guess. All right, queen. So that's good. Well, I think it's good. We could still lose, but this is why you do not use the pair bottom card on the turn, because we would have used it. So opponent's going to do pair... I don't know what opponent's going to do here. Opponent's in a pretty horrible spot. It's kind of interesting. If he does pair bottom card, I have to assume he has a 2 in his hand. So he just did whole card +1. Well, that doesn't really change much. So he must have a 3 in his hand at this point. Or maybe just turned like a... I don't know what's happening here. Wow, we lose to 10-8. How does he have 10-8? Let's think about that. Why did he do board +1 here? He had so he had Jack 8 or 9-8. Flop was Jack 6-3. That's very odd. Opponent played in somewhat a nonsensical way. Interesting spot. I'm trying to figure out exactly what he was doing because it seems like we had a pretty nice stranglehold on that pot. Maybe he used the board -1 to try to get us to burn a board +1, so maybe he's leveling us. That could certainly be the case. I mean, obviously, as the game gets more advanced, people are not going to play in just a straightforward way. So we have to recognize that what they do could just be a level. But interesting, like a bluff, you know? Like maybe he uses board -1 to make me use my board +1. Makes me burn that immediately. Okay, so let's think about this. Opponent had no pair going to the river, which means that we were in very good shape. I guess he could have done whole card +1 to turn his 10 into a jack, assuming he had that. I don't know. That's an interesting scenario. I think we could have gotten outplayed in that hand, in that game. It's tough to say, but certainly a cool game, a cool outcome. You have to be happy whenever you are playing a new game and you get outplayed in some way. I don't know if I got outplayed. Maybe the opponent was just clicking buttons, but clearly he played it well because he won. And I think if he had a hand like 10-7 or 10... Well, he had Jack 8 or 10-8 by the river. So he must have had... He did board plus or card +1 in his hand. So he must have had 10-7 or 9-8. So he actually crushed 9-8, and we lose to 10-7 because he could do the 10 into a jack. So I think we're actually in relatively good shape there. The queen was clearly bad for us on the river. All right, so we're playing against the same card, or same guy. Let's keep that in mind. Implement same strategy as last time. And just keep in mind this guy is capable of bluffing. Or may be capable of bluffing. All right, so notice again, we have a budget here. We could take 6 cards, but we only can go to 90 points. And all these cards have a value because some are just stronger than others. I could put back something like board +1 or board -1. Notice, then I have 25 points. I could use whole card +1 or whole card -1, but I think these are just worse than board +1. So I think this is just a bad setting of the points according to the makers of the game. Because board +1 and board -1 effectively counter what your opponent's doing. Whole card -1 and whole card +1 cannot counter what your opponent's doing. It can alter your hand, but it can't affect what your opponent's doing. So, you know what? Maybe we should experiment. We're trying to pair bottom card. Let's do whole card +1. Let's just experiment here. I would typically take board +1, but maybe this is better. Pocket pairs are particularly bad in this game because the pair bottom card does nothing because we already have a pair. So our strongest asset here is gone. So we can do board -1 here and have a 3/8, which is pretty good. Or we can get it all in and have pocket 8s. Interesting scenario. Let's try going all in here. I don't want to call because if I call, we have to burn the board -1 immediately. And if we burn it immediately, then we are down a card versus our opponent, and we're not winning a big pot. You always want to make sure you're winning big pots whenever you burn cards. And notice if the opponent folds, that's fine. We're happy if he folds. So he does call. So let's see what he does. Hopefully he uses a card first. If he does board +1 on the 9, I can't do anything about that, and I'll have to redeal the flop. And then we're stuck with pocket 8s, which would be bad. But, all right, so he does board -1 to make 3/8. Interesting. This is fine. Remember last game he did the same thing where he changed board -1 when he didn't need it. So maybe he was trying to level us again. It's difficult to say. We could just have the same hand. Notice if he has an 8 in his hand and he uses his board, if he uses his pair bottom card to make himself into 3/8, that's great for us. Because now we're going to have all 4 cards and he's going to have 2. Assuming we chop this pot. So this is a fine scenario. We're thrilled to be in the spot. Only thing we're really concerned with is a heart on the river. I don't think we're against some sort of a straight draw. If he does, notice that because we're in position, say on the river's a 10, and he randomly does board -1, I can just do board +1 to change it back to ensure that we lock it up. So this is good. So I said pairs are particularly bad, except whenever you make a set. But notice here we didn't even make a set, and our opponent sort of played into us here. So river's a 6, we lose to 9-7. Very hard for him to have 9-7 or 7-4. Very, very hard, given he moved this to an 8. Pair bottom card. So opponent has most likely an 8. So notice that since he paired the bottom card, he can't have a straight because now he has a pocket pair in his hand. So that's worth mentioning. All right, so we just win. So there he overvalued. Wow, what happened here? He paired bottom card. So he must have had pocket 5s, but why would he do board -1 on that? It doesn't make a lot of sense. So this guy, I don't know who he is, but he seems to be playing in a way that is relatively, what's even the right word? Unconventional, I guess. It seems like he's not necessarily playing purely to play face up. He's not trying to just make the nuts. He's trying to mess with me as well. So let's keep that in mind. Let's use the same strategy. We'll try whole card +1 again. I imagine if we think about this, these two cards are probably either really good in conjunction with each other or really bad in conjunction. I mean, like maybe we need whole card -1, board +1. Don't really know if that matters so much, though. But let's give it a try. King Jack, he limps. Let's go ahead and check. We don't want to play big pots out of position. I actually don't think going all in here would be that bad. Especially if you could do something like get 3 whole cards. I think that's perfectly acceptable. We just win a lot of small pots that way. So notice here, if I do whole card +1. So notice if I had whole card -1, I could change this into a 10. I could do board +1 to change this into a 10, and I could have 3 of a kind. Alternatively, if there was a queen on the board, I'd want to be able to alter that. So it seems like these all counteract. These all even out to some extent. We're obviously trying to make high hands, though. So maybe we do the +1 cards. Normally there are sounds in this game, by the way. I have the sounds turned off just for this video so that they don't overshadow my beautiful voice. Let me know what you guys think of this game. This game is certainly fun. I've been enjoying it. It's sort of like a mix of poker and then a game like Magic the Gathering or chess. All right, so notice here we can do board +1 to have 3 of a kind, but there's 3 clubs on the board. And when that's the case, we're not really drawing super live to the nuts. We have to be somewhat careful in this spot. I could perhaps bet the turn here and just win a small pot. I should definitely experiment more with that. Here we'll just check, though. Maybe on the river I bet 60. Let's try that. This is obviously a bluff. And if he calls, we lose. But on the river, if he calls, I can check. He may burn a card, and that would be fantastic. He raises, though. Definitely not what I want to happen. Is there anything we can do here? We can do nothing, so we fold. All right, so that did not work. Being in position is very important. I cannot reiterate that enough, that being in position is very key in this game. I mean, the optimal strategy could just be to play incredibly tight from out of position. All right, so we can make bottom set here, but again, bottom set's not really what we want. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We can't do that. We have only board +1. I thought I had board -1 like I traditionally do, but I took this whole card +1 instead. So we can do whole card +1 to make this into a 3. Is that what I want to do? He bets into me. So, wow. Remember, we're not trying to make bottom set. But we're kind of bleeding chips. I'm going to fold this and wait for a better spot. That could easily just be a horrible play. I do not know what the right play is there, but I do know the way I've been losing whenever I have pair bottom card. Where is it? Pair bottom card is by making bottom set. Because I recognize the opponent's probably drawing to middle set and top set. And if he has middle set or top set, you really don't want to be in there with bottom set. All right, so we can do board +1 to change this into a 7. So let's do this. Let's bet. If he calls, we'll go with the strategy. If he has a 10, that's pretty unfortunate. This is, again, another good example of the spot where you need to be very careful. All right, so let's think about this. We can do whole card +1 to make ourselves in a top pair. We'd much rather do board +1 here to make this into a 7. So let's see what he does. Notice that we did get blinded down a bit by him, which is bad because we may burn all of our cards and then be cardless even if we double up. Remember, the opponent can do nonsensical things, so we have to keep that in mind whenever he changes something. So maybe I'm not so concerned with blocking whatever he's doing. This is where the leveling game comes in, which is fun. So notice if he does... Well, he does board -1 on the 5. All right. I think we have to now redeal the flop. Because we can't do board +1 and make it to a 6. That does nothing. Pair bottom card gives us pocket 7s. That's horrible. So let's redeal flop. Terrible spot for us. We are almost certainly an underdog now. Certainly an underdog on this flop. Opponent could redeal flop again, which would be great. I'd be loving that. But we're in very bad shape. Not a whole lot we can do in this one. All right, so when he checks through, we pretty much lose. Let's think about this. Is there a difference between pocket 7s and pocket 9s? There's not. Or 7s and say like the river's a 9, the odds of him having exactly pocket 8s are so low. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and do pair bottom card to give us pocket 7s. And then if the river is a 6 or a 7, we can do board +1. This is unfortunate because on the river, notice I can only play one card. So say I could do whole card +1 on the river to like make an 8 or a 7 or a 6 good cards for me. But if I play board +1, for example, opponent can just check and then I still have nothing and I lose. All right, so queen. So we're probably going to lose this one. Well, we are going to lose this one unless he just somehow has nothing. And he had ace-9. So let's think about this. On the flop, again, so he did the same thing he did earlier where he moved the 6 to the 5, right? Which does nothing for his hand. So let's keep that in mind as we continue playing him. He is very, very prone to using the board +1 and board -1 in a bluffy way. Unfortunately, he completely screwed me that time. Which is, actually, if you think about this is actually a very good play by the opponent. Because if he knows I'm playing middle set cards, because I have the pair bottom card, right? If he knows I'm trying to make middle set or top set, if he just blindly changes the middle card to one rank lower, that hurts me very badly. So the way we counter this is by taking board +1 and board -1. Notice if we had... Well, let's think about this. So last game he did board -1 first. I could only do board +1, so I was losing that game either way. Well, I mean, to be fair, I had the best hand with pocket 7s, but he probably had pair bottom cards to make it into 9s. Let's continue implementing this strategy. I'm going to take whole card. I'm going to take board +1 and board -1 this time. I think these two are just better. Let's give it a whirl. Let's see what happens. I have yet to play against someone who is actively changing the board +1 and board -1 as a bluff, but this is good. This is the kind of thing you want to get practice with if you are playing. This strategy I've been using has been very successful, and so far I think we've won 1 and lost 2 against this guy, and that's what I want. I want someone who is going to be challenging me, and this guy certainly seems to bring a challenge, so that's good. He's bluffing. I mean, really, he's bluffing with his cards, and that's a fun thing to do. All right, so we have 9-8. I raise, he re-raises. So we're going to call this and see what develops because we are in position. Of course, we could just be getting blinded down here horribly. So he's taking a third hole card already. So we have not seen this card yet. So let's keep this in mind. We are trying to make bottom sets. All right. So we can do board -1 on the 6 to make the 6 into the 5. But we could conceivably lose this. He may redeal flop, which would be pretty bad, but then we get to redeal flop back. So let's call. I think we're just going to make a set, and if he has a straight, he has a straight. The real issue here... Well, he likes to not do anything. Wow. So this is a tough spot between making this into a 5 or just checking. So the problem is if he has a 5 in his hand, he can do pair bottom card and then have 4 5s, and then I lose. It's pretty hard to have a 5, I guess. Let's do board -1. I don't know what the right play is here. I like it, though. This guy is mixing it up on me. So he checks. 9 does nothing. We have 2 pair. We're going to make this into a full house by the river. Whenever you're all in, you want to be making the nuts on the river because this is the only hand that matters. I guess I'll go ahead and do pair bottom card here. Because now, the opponent cannot no longer alter the flop. The flop is completely locked in. There are no cards available as the game currently sits that alter the flop at this point. So, it is what it is. This is what we have. I think we're in good shape unless he has a 5. I mean, if he has a 5 and pair bottom card, we're going to lose. But beyond that, I think we're in pretty good shape. Let's go ahead and do pair bottom card, just so we can do board +1 on the river if he changes something. Opponent does have 3 cards, though. I mean, when a guy has 3 cards, it's really easy to be crushed. Notice even if he does have A5, though, we're still in fine shape, because if he does not have the pair bottom card, we still just win. I don't need to do board +1. I don't need to redeal anything. So 6-3. So he wants another card. It's fine. Can have all the cards you want. 3. Should I actually change this 3 to a 4? I think I should. I know I should, because he could have 4 3s at this point. So notice he paired bottom card. So we have to do board +1 here. And we're doing this in case he has 3 3s. Or has 2 3s in his hand, and then he would have 4 3s and we would lose. So we have to do board +1 there. So I think the only way we really lose this is if he does board -1 or if he just had pocket 5s the whole time. Interesting scenario. Whole card +1. So what does that do? So he just changed a 3 into a 4? I don't know what happens here. So he made a straight on the river. He had ace 7 6. 8 5 8 5 5 3 3 4. What was going on here? Oh, he must have had ace 5, and he changed the 5 to the 6. That's what happened there. So we were going to win that one either way. Let's play one more time if he wants to play again. 2 and 2. I enjoy playing versus token. So that was an example of a spot where he did not pick the pair bottom card clearly, because he would have had 4 5s and I would have lost. And instead he elected to do, what did he do? He did 6th Street, 3rd card. So what he was trying to do in that game was get it all in pre-flop. That was his goal, was to get in pre-flop, have 3 cards, and be in good shape. So let's keep that in mind. We'll use my same strategy. I think this strategy's probably just good. 2 and 2, though. 2 and 2 is not so good. But, I mean, so it's kind of interesting. In this game, it seems like once you become relatively advanced, the edge starts to diminish. But against amateur players, in this game, you'll have a gigantic edge compared to regular poker. Because before I played this, I've been streaming it a lot on Twitch, twitch.tv/Jonathan Little. I went something like 35 wins and 7 losses or something like that. You know, like an incredibly good record. And this was against players who had never played before. Obviously, I was new too. Once I started using this strategy. When I first started playing, I just lost every time because I had no clue what I was doing. But, you know, once you get in 6 or 8 games, you start to figure out what to do. So you always have to ask yourself, how am I winning and how am I losing? All right, so notice here, opponent has all the cards. He has a bunch of low-value cards. That almost certainly implies he does not have the pair bottom card. So if he wants to get it all in pre-flop, when I'm in position and I have a good hand, I'm just going to be happy, very happy with that. All right, so will I get it in with pocket jacks out of position? I don't know. Maybe, I mean, is folding this ridiculous? Maybe we just go all in? I don't know. So this is a scenario where I don't... So he doesn't have pair bottom cards. Let's keep that in mind. He does not have pair bottom card. Because he would not have enough points to have pair bottom card, I don't think. I don't want to take pocket jacks versus 3 cards. I don't think. Yeah, let's go all in. I don't know. We'll try this. Opponent almost certainly has the 3 card. And he's in position. So we're pretty unhappy. I mean, I say we're unhappy. I really don't know if we're unhappy or not. But our pair bottom card is useless here. But we're just going to try to make a set. So let's do board +1. Board +1 makes this into a set. That's good for us. He's going to change this back. Most likely. If he can, if he has that ability. And then what do I do from there? Do I change the 8 to the 7? Maybe I do. I don't know. This is a tough spot where if he has pair bottom card plus 3 whole cards, he has a very large amount of access to bottom sets. You have to be very careful in that scenario. I think I just have to make this into a jack, though, immediately. I don't really see any other good option. Board -1. Okay, so he's going to change it back. He tanked for a while for that. I'm not really sure what that means. Okay, I think do we accept this or do we redeal flop? Maybe we redeal the flop. Is that crazy? We have an overpair, but it's so easy for him just to have the nuts here. I'm going to check and see what develops. This, again, could just be a spew. Board -1 would change us into a king. That does nothing for us, so we're actually probably in bad shape now. Notice he could have a king or an ace, so there's no real point in doing board -1. We don't know what's going on. He redeals turn. Okay. Well, that's good. We'll check. Horrible for the opponent. All right, so we're going to do board -1 on the... Are we going to do... No, we don't want to do... We don't want to do anything here. We lose to the straight, but that's it. He has a straight. 9-7. So he had 9-7-4. Let's keep that in mind. He had 9-7-4 on 10-8-3. So he had nothing, and actually... Wait a second. So I changed the 10 to a jack, and then he changed it back. Oh, he needed the 10. That's why I changed it back. So we had top set versus a straight draw. We had overpair versus a straight draw, and we lost. So that's fine. Can't be too unhappy with that. Even if the river was a card I could have changed into a 2 or something like that, I would not have changed it because it's so easy for him to make bottom sets. Bottom set turns into quads. So I'm okay with that again. So it seems like the way we are losing, well, that way we lost. That time we lost just to the open-ended straight draw they got there, when I actually had blockers, interestingly enough. And I'm okay with that. You always have to look at your losses and say, did I get outplayed in this spot or did I just get unlucky? And in this game, it's actually relatively easy to tell compared to other games if you got outplayed or if you got unlucky. Like right here, we got unlucky because we had top pair versus bottom pair. All right, so that's going to be it for this video. I think we went 2 and 3, not really what we want to do, but we got unlucky a few times, and I'm okay with that. If you find yourself in spots in this game where on the river, your opponent does something and it just makes you lose for all the chips, that's typically bad. And usually those could be avoided, unless your opponent's drawing somewhat thin. Like on that river, for example, where we just, well, the one we lost previously, not this one, but the previous hand where our opponent rivered straight. He needed a few specific cards on the turn to win, the turn or the river to win, and he got it. Maybe he needed as many as like 10 or 15 cards to win. Maybe he had board +1 or board -1 in his hand, or maybe card +1 or card -1 in his hand. That actually could be a good combination. Whole card +1, whole card -1, 3 whole cards. That would be pretty strong because you can really manipulate the cards. But yeah, I'm okay with that. I think we probably got it all in with 65% equity or so, and we didn't win. And when that happens, you have to be okay with that. So again, check out the game, HoldemX.com. Be sure to check out my stream. I stream it a decent amount at twitch.tv/JonathanLittle. Also be sure to check out my weekly educational blog at jonathanlittlepoker.com. Thank you very much for watching, and feel free to leave your comments.